responsible for the mental illness that has been inflicted upon our people by the American government, institutions, and those people who are in positions of power. I don't give a damn if they burn down Target, because Target should be on the streets with us, calling for the justice that our people deserve. Where was AutoZone at the time when Philando Castile was shot in a car, which is what they actually represent? Where were they? So if you are not coming to the people's defense, then don't challenge us when young people and other people who are frustrated and instigated by the people you pay. You are paying instigators to be among our people out there throwing rocks, breaking windows, and burning down buildings. And so young people are responding to that. They are enraged, and there's an easy way to stop it. Arrest the cops. Charge the cops. Charge all the cops. Not just some of them, not just here in Minneapolis. Charge them in every city across America where our people are being murdered. Charge them everywhere. That's the bottom line. Charge the cops. Do your job. Do what you say this country is supposed to be about, the land of the free for all. It has not been free for black people, and we are tired. Don't talk to us about looting. Y'all are the looters. America has looted black people. America looted the Native Americans when they first came here. So looting is what you do. We learned it from you. We learned violence from you. We learned violence from you. The violence was what we learned from you. So if you want us to do better, then damn it, you do better.
All right, fam. That was young activist Tamika Mallory. And everybody might not agree with everything that Tamika has to say. Everybody might not agree with everything that Tamika has, that Tamika supports, and that Tamika is that she pushes and that she stands behind. But you gotta agree with the statement that she just made. And I love what she said. America has looted black people. You want to talk about us looting? Well, America has looted black people. What's up, fam? It's me. I'm back. And I just want to bring y'all some updates. Just want to bring y'all some of the latest information. Just want to let y'all know some of the stuff that's going on. And I'll have a link to some information. I have a link to that video that she did with that they did on Democracy Now! And there were other people involved in that. So I have a link to that so that you can hear what Cornel West, Bakari Sellers, he was talking a little bit different. You know, Bakari can be coonish sometimes, but he was talking a little bit different on this Democracy Now! Thing. And there's another young lady that was on there. So all three of them, and she was really serious about talking about defunding these police, defunding these police departments. And I think that's something that we really need to concentrate on, and something that we need to pay attention to. So I'll have the link to that in the description box so that y'all can go listen to what all three of them, along with Tamika, what all three of them had to say. And I'll also have, well, you know, if you want to know about Tamika, you can just type in Tamika Mallory and you can pull up her information. But she's been involved in activism and all of that since she was 11, 12 years old. So I just wanted you to hear that, because that pretty much sums it up. That pretty much sums up how we feel. That pretty much sums up what's going on across America right now, and even in other countries. This is a global thing. We had protests after Mike Brown died. We had protests after Trayvon died. We had protests after Philando Castile died. We had protests after Freddie Gray died. We had protests after Eric Gardner died. We had protests, but it didn't have the impact that it's having now. This is not just national, which means it's covering the whole entire United States. Now it's global. Because we got protests in Amsterdam. We got protests in Italy. We got protests in Europe. We got protests in Germany. We got protests in Ireland. We got protests all over the globe. All over the globe, people is protesting police brutality. Especially police brutality against black folk. So it's global now. So you having an impact. Okay? There is an impact being made. So don't let Trump and his threats and all of this other bullshit cause you to lose focus. Don't let that cause you to be distracted. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep handling your business because it is having an impact. Okay? So let's get into some other stuff that's going on, because I'm going to tell you now, it's a whole lot going on. So let's get into some other stuff that's going on. Now, let me pull up some of these articles that I got so that we can talk about some of this. And let me see what this one is, because I had it saved in my thing. So let me see what this one is.
Thousands.
I don't think I want that one. Hold on. That's not one that I want. Okay, so let's talk about some stuff that's going on. In Atlanta, a couple of nights ago, because they have imposed curfew in most of the cities across the country. In most of the cities, they have imposed curfew, especially these major cities like cities in LA. In California, in LA, New York, even down here in the South, in Greensboro and High Point, they have curfews. So they have imposed curfews pretty much just everywhere. And in Atlanta the other night, they had the curfew, and there were 2 students that were out in a car past curfew. So police officers pulled them out of the car, yanked them up out of the car, jacked them up and all of that, and threw them around and roughed them up a little bit and arrested them and all of that. Well, those 2 police officers were fired. Those 2 police officers were fired. Now, the police officer, and I'm sure that y'all have seen this video, the police officer that hit the black woman in the mouth and knocked her out, hit her and knocked her out in Baltimore. His name was, what was his name again? Terry Love. That was his name. The police officer's name was Terry Love. Well, the mayor decided that he was well within his rights and everything that he did was okay and all of this kind of stuff. So no charges are being filed against him or whatever. So we need to make sure that we put him out front and center. His name is Terry Love again. He was a black police officer in Baltimore, and he's the one, the black woman, she hit the white police officer twice. He didn't bother her. Terry Love, the black police officer, hit her from what he wasn't actually behind her. He was more like to the side of her. And he swung and hit her and knocked her out. Well, he won't be charged. So we need to handle that. We need to take care of that. We need to make sure that we put him out there, that we talk about that, that we bring more attention to that, because he was not charged. But now this is what I want. This is something that's very, very interesting. Very interesting. Louisville police chief fired after fatal shooting of David McAtee. David McAtee, it was the black man that owned the barbecue business, right? Police failed to have their body cameras on at the scene. So let's read a little bit about this. A police chief has been fired and 2 officers are on administrative leave after a barbecue business owner in the west end of Louisville, Kentucky. Now remember, Louisville, Kentucky is where Breonna Taylor was shot dead 8 times in her home. Her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who was a legal gun owner, fired back. They claim that one of his bullets hit a police officer in the leg, but they have dropped charges on him. Now, they left it open to be able to charge him again later on, but, you know, we found out that reports are being put out there that it was actually friendly fire. Fire from other police officers, a bullet from other police officers that hit this one in the leg. So this is what happened in Louisville during the protest. A police chief has been fired and 2 officers are on administrative leave after a barbecue business owner in the west end of Louisville, Kentucky was shot dead by law enforcement trying to enforce curfew amid protests over a previous police shooting, officials said. David McAtee, who owned Yaya's Barbecue, was shot and killed early Monday morning in the parking lot of Dino's Food Mark on 26th and Broadway, where he normally set up his stand. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear said in a statement that the Louisville Metro Police Department and National Guard were dispatched to the lot to disperse the crowd when they were fired upon and subsequently returned fire, killing McAtee. Amid an investigation by state and local police, Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher said he learned that the officers involved in the incident had not had their body cameras activated when the shooting occurred. So they had turned their body cams off. This type of institutional failure would not be tolerated, Fisher said. Accordingly, I have relieved Steve Conrad of his duty as chief of Louisville Metro Police Department. So I want y'all to understand, y'all got to remember, this is the second in the last month. This is the second Louisville police chief to get gone. Now the one that was police, and I don't remember his name, but the one that was police chief during the whole Breonna Taylor incident, remember, after Kenneth Walker, after the charges against him was dismissed, the old police chief resigned. Because they talking about doing all of these investigations, and they talking about independent investigations, and they talking about the FBI coming in and investigating and all of this kind of stuff. And we done already done a report telling you all about all the stuff that was going on, all the criminal activity that was going on with this so-called elite drug task force, where they was opening up these packages and all of this kind of stuff from the FedEx hub. And police officers stealing money and all of this. So it's all kinds of stuff going on. So after Kenneth Walker was, the charges against him was dropped, that old police chief resigned. Well, this police chief here ain't been in place no more than about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And they done fired him. And you gonna say that what y'all doing ain't having an impact. It's having an impact. Fisher said Assistant Police Chief Robert Schroeder will be taking Conrad's place. The 2 officers that fired their weapons violated our policy by either not wearing or not activating their cameras. So either they didn't have them on or they didn't turn them on. That is completely unacceptable and there is no excuse. We will review the entire incident to determine if there are any other policy violations that occurred. I assure you we will follow up and there will be discipline for failing to utilize our cameras. Schroeder said that there were 2 LMPD officers and 2 National Guardsmen involved in returning fire. The two LMPD officers, Katie Cruz and Austin Allen, were placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. The National Guard will also conduct its own review on its members, he said, because see, at this point, these folks are still supposed to be using rubber bullets and all of this kind of stuff. So we got to find out what's going on. But it's just amazing that in the space of a week and a half, 2 weeks, or whatever, you got 2 police chiefs gone in Louisville, Kentucky. So I just wanted to bring that out there and put that out there to y'all. Oh yeah, we're going to get to the George Floyd case because there's new developments in the George Floyd case. I just want to talk about some of this other stuff that's going on. Now, I found this very interesting because in the George Floyd case that the FBI and the DOJ are supposed to be doing their investigation to determine whether or not Chauvin or any of these other police officers, because remember, those other 3 still have not been arrested and they still have not been charged. So, and they done moved Chauvin 2 times. He went from the Ramsey police department, from the Ramsey jail in St. Paul to 2 other jails in the last couple of days. I guess all because of this rioting, because they got him in protective custody and all of that. So the police, the Department of Justice and the FBI are supposed to be doing their own a separate investigation into whether or not, like I said, Chauvin or any of these other 3 police officers violated George Floyd's civil rights. Right? Okay, well, it seems to be taking it, and they're supposed to be expediting this, and Trump came out claiming that he had ordered them to expedite the case, and it's supposed to be top priority and all of that, but we still ain't heard nothing from them. After all of that, it's been a week. It's been over a week now since we saw the video of them killing this man, of them murdering this man in cold blood. Well, evidently, the Minnesota Human Rights Department, they're not waiting for the FBI to bring charges, or they're not waiting for the FBI's investigation or for the FBI's report or whatever. They're doing their own thing. Now, this is coming out of TwinCity.com, Pioneer Press. Mara Goodfried from Pioneer Press, she published this June the 2nd, 2020. The Minnesota Department of the Minnesota Human Rights Department filed civil rights charge against Minnepolis PD. So they're not filing this charge against one individual police officer. They're filing this charge against the whole police department, against the whole Minneapolis Police Department. The Minnesota Department of Human Rights is beginning an investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department after filing a civil rights charge related to the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody last week. Governor Tim Walz announced Tuesday. Human Rights Commissioner Rebecca Lucero wrote the charge of discrimination. Human Rights Commissioner Rebecca Lucero wrote the charge of discrimination was on the basis of race. Floyd was black, and the officer who knelt on his neck for more than 8 minutes is white. Lucero wrote she alleges discriminatory acts in violation of the Minnesota Human Rights Act because officers handcuffed Floyd, who was unarmed, on May 25th and kneeled on his neck while he gasped for air and called out for help. The respondents' officers did not respond to the calls for help, and George Floyd died. She also wrote, there is sufficient information to investigate whether the Minneapolis Police Department utilizes systematic discriminatory patterns or practices towards people of color, specifically Black community members, on the basis of race and in the area of public service. So see, she going after the whole Minnesota Police Department. She's not just dealing with one case. She's going after the whole police department. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry said he welcomes the state's action. For our city to begin healing, we need to deliver justice for George Floyd and his family and enact deep, meaningful policing reforms, Fry said in a statement on Tuesday. For years in Minneapolis, police chiefs and elected officials committed to change have been thwarted by police union protections and laws that severely limit accountability among police departments. I welcome today's announcement because breaking through those persistent barriers, shifting the culture of policing, and addressing systematic racism will require all of us working hand in hand. The investigation will look at the Minneapolis Police Department's policies, procedures, and practices over the past decade. So they're going back into cases over the past decade. Derek Chauvin, who was fired from his job as a Minnesota police officer, was charged Friday with third-degree murder and manslaughter. The U.S. Justice Department and FBI are conducting an investigation to determine whether federal civil rights laws were broken. Minnesotans can expect our administration to use every tool at our disposal to deconstruct generations of systematic racism in our state, Wolf said in a statement Tuesday. This effort is only one of many steps to come in our effort to restore trust with those with those in the community who have been unseen and unheard for far too long. The Human Rights Department is seeking an agreement for Minneapolis city leadership and the police department to immediately implement interim measures in advance of long-term measures to address systematic discriminatory practices, according to the statement from Walsh's office. Now, y'all remember we just did the report where we listened to the club owner that said that Derek Chauvin worked for her for 17 years as an off-duty security person, and that George Floyd had worked for her for about a year off and on as a bouncer inside the club. And remember how she talked about the problems were systemic. They were systematic. How she talked about it wasn't just Chauvin or whatever his name is, and the officers that treated the Black community and all of that differently during these club nights and all of that, that it was actually systemic, that it actually went back to licensing and the third precinct and trying to get these events for urban nights organized all together. She said the whole process was totally different when it was dealing with Black folk than when it was dealing with the Latinos and all of that, when they wanted to have their events on their nights. So even she talked about it being systemic, being systematic. So here we have the Human Rights Department saying the exact same thing and saying that they are going to investigate the Minnesota Police Department over a decade. People with information for the investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department are being asked to contact the Department of Human Rights and they give you the number and the website. So, yeah, I just wanted you to know what other things are going on. I just want you to know what other things are going on. Now, some of you may have heard this, but what's his name? Keith Ellison, who is now the Attorney General in Minnesota, has now got this case. And he's already talking about, how difficult it's going to be, and these cases are not easy, and how long it's going to take, and all of that. Well, I want y'all, hold on, let me see, did I save it? Hold on here, because I want y'all to hear from his son. And his son is actually a city councilman in Minneapolis. Now, he's, again, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, and his son, Jeremiah Ellison, it sits on the city council. And I want you to hear the interview. Hold on, let me find it. That Jeremiah did with Democracy Now! But I gotta find it, because I thought I saved it, but I didn't. But don't worry, I'm gonna find it. Let me see if this is it. No, that's not the one. Hold on, because it's a few. So hold on. Because I want y'all to hear this. I want y'all to hear what Keith Ellison's son has to say. Now, Keith Ellison is playing that dumb role, you know what I'm saying? And they have put him out in the front, as the token Negro and all of this. And then when he decides that he's going to try to bury this or he's going to try to drag this out or whatever, they'll be able to say it's not racism because, the black attorney general took over the case or whatever the case may be. But I want you to hear what his son had to say. So let me find this right quick, because I thought I had saved it, but I didn't. Jeremiah Ellison interview with Democracy Now! Okay, and I just want you to hear a little something of what he had to say.
Hey folks, I'm Joe Biden.
Okay, that's I don't want to hear you.
As I said,
Don't nobody want to hear you.
Now by Jeremiah Ellison. He's a member of the Minneapolis City Council. Councilman Ellison, good morning to you. I want to get to those protests in just a second, but at the heart of those protests, the rage is about the fact that no one has been arrested in this case. The mayor has basically called it a murder and is asking why that hasn't happened. A lot of people obviously have seen the tape of what happened. But here's what the county attorney said. He said, and this is Mike Freeman, he said that there is other evidence that does not support a criminal charge. Are you privy to what that other evidence may be?
No, I think the statement's vague. I wish the district attorney would be more specific, and more importantly, I wish the district attorney would watch the tape, see what's evident on the tape as far as the fact that 4 officers murdered Mr. Floyd and make the arrest.
Well, absent the charges, council member, how do you calm a city?
I think that we had a great opportunity on the first night to respond differently when it came to the situation. I think for those of us who kind of come from more activist backgrounds and who have participated in mass protests before, you can kind of see where a crowd's going, and I felt like this was really preventable. Unfortunately, I think that conventional wisdom of force sort of won out, and that was the strategy we pursued, and I think that strategy has proven to be an unmitigated failure.
You know what? It was interesting yesterday on our air. Craig interviewed one of George Floyd's best friends, NBA great Stephen Jackson. And Stephen, he was asked about those protests and what George would have thought. And he said he would have welcomed the support, but he basically said he didn't like that kind of violence in the streets. That wasn't, he said, what George Floyd would have wanted.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the dynamics when you look at a protest like that is that really the protest is it's about the death of the person, and not always necessarily what the person would have wanted, right? I imagine that nobody would want to see the kind of devastation that we are experiencing here in Minneapolis. But what people are responding to is not just the death of Mr. Floyd, but also Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, Fong Lee. These are people who have been killed by the various police departments in the metro area, and whose deaths have largely gone unrecognized as crimes.
Now that was him. Yeah, this is Jeremiah Ellison, the son of Attorney General Keith Ellison. Now that was him on the Today Show. But I want you to hear a little bit of something that he had to say, again, with Democracy Now.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the quarantine report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thousands took to the streets of Minneapolis.
Now I want you to listen to this. This is very important.
Who's now the Attorney General of...
There's an attempt to deny their dignity, such as the case with George Floyd. I never want to see that shown to the public, but often it is the emergency of these videos that even gets us a chance at the pursuit of justice.
I wanted to go back to a time a few years ago, ask you about the police killing of 24-year-old African-American Jamar Clark, November 2015, during a protest at the 4th Precinct police station. An officer dressed in fatigues and carrying what appeared to be a gas-launching gun pointed his weapon at you as you stood with your hands up. At the time, you had long dreads, Jeremiah. A Star Tribune photographer captured the moment, and your dad, then Congressmember Keith Ellison, who's now the Attorney General of Minnesota, tweeted, writing, "Photo is agonizing for me to see. My son is peacefully protesting with hands up, officer shouldering gun. Why?" And he spoke about it on Democracy Now! At the time.
Well, my first reaction when I saw the picture of Jeremiah was horror. I would gladly face...
Now, this is Keith Ellison, who was a congressman. Now he's the Attorney General of Minnesota. This is the same Keith Ellison who came out, and denounced Farrakhan. He's a Muslim. He came out, he denounced Farrakhan and all of this. And this is him speaking about when his son was protesting the killing of Jamar Clark, and how a gun was pointed at his son who was peacefully protesting. This is him speaking out about that.
Whatever dangers were necessary, but to have my son have to face it is another thing. He's a 24-year-old guy. He's has a strong passion for justice. He's a professional artist, and he doesn't think he needs his dad worrying about him like that. But I can't help it. I remember when he was just a little boy, and now he's a grown man, and I actually am a little proud that he feels this burning desire to stand up for what's right and to make a better society. But yet that picture was very, very disturbing, and we're not gonna let it sit there. I mean, to shoulder a weapon like that at nonviolent protesters is outrageous. It's a violation of decency, and we're gonna find out whether it's a violation of law.
So that's Keith Ellison, former Congress member, first Muslim member of Congress, now the Attorney General of Minnesota. And Jeremiah, at the time, you were protesting in the streets nearby the 3rd precinct at the 4th precinct. Can you talk about this arc of your life from standing in the streets protesting the police killing of Jamar Clark to now being a city council member and you're protesting a similar killing?
Yeah. You know, what I think is really interesting about the last couple of years since that incident occurred is that, you know, I showed up there as a neighbor. You know, my dad mentioned that I'm an artist, and I have my art studio, and I grew up in the neighborhood that I now represent. And I wasn't sort of one of the organizers of the event. And as a matter of fact, Candace was one of the main organizers who was really holding it down, and who was somebody I really sought guidance from at the 4th precinct occupation. You know, I think that while I've always been involved in politics, and while I've always had you know, sort of this desire to pursue justice, that event really politicized me in a major way, and it made me realize that we need leaders to be more creative, more bold in pursuing and ensuring that kind of thing doesn't happen again.
Finally, I want to ask both of you, starting with Candace Montgomery, as we wrap.
So I just wanted you to hear what once Congressman, now Attorney General of Minnesota, and the person who is now in charge of this George Floyd case, I wanted you to hear how he felt about his son being a peaceful protester and having a weapon shouldered and aimed at him. So we cannot allow Keith Ellison to just breeze through this. We cannot allow him to cover this up. We cannot allow him with his political aspirations. We cannot allow him to just let these police officers just get off scot-free. We can't allow that. We can't allow that. We can't allow him to come up with all of these excuses and come up with all this fake phony stuff about how long this is going to take and how difficult this is and all of that. Because I want y'all to remember something. What I want y'all to remember and what I want y'all to remind people of when you're having discussions and when you're talking about this, what I want you to remember and remind people of is that, yes, all 4 of them were police officers when they committed this heinous crime. But Chauvin had been fired from the police office. He was no longer a police officer, the police department. He was no longer a police officer when he was charged. So when he was charged as a public citizen. And he should have to deal with the exact same thing any other public citizen should have to deal with. He should have to go through the exact same prosecution, the exact same procedure that any private citizen would have to go through. Same thing with those other 3 police officers. If they are charged, and they should be, they better be. If they are, when they are charged, let's just put it that way. When they are charged, they will be charged as private citizens. And they should be treated the same way any other private citizen would be treated under these circumstances. So we cannot allow Keith Ellison to forget that his own child had to deal with this. His own child, who was protesting peacefully, was looking down the barrel of a gun, and he didn't like it then. So if he didn't feel good about it, then imagine how George Floyd's family feels. And we cannot allow Keith Ellison to forget that. So that's the reason why I wanted to bring this to your attention. And this young man he's very proactive. This young man is very much about the protest. He's very much about justice. He's very much about reform. He's very much about the fact that, you know, they have been pushing for a lot of reforms of the city council. Certain members of the city council have been pushing for all of these reforms and all of this kind of stuff for a long time. But their cries and their voices have fallen on deaf ears. So it seems to me like the son is just a little different from the dad. It seems to me like the son, has that spirit. The son is really about his community and about his people, whereas dad is about, getting them butter biscuits and keeping himself in a place where he can rise politically. So we got to stay on. We got to keep our foot on the neck of Keith Ellison so that he can do his job and do what he's supposed to do, and so that we can see these other 3 officers charged, arrested and charged like they should be charged, and we can see charges against Chauvin upgraded. Okay, now let's move on, because I don't want to keep you long, but I want to give you all the updates that I've gotten. Now, let's talk about the latest update in George's in the George Floyd case, and this is real important. So I want y'all to listen to this, and then I'll read a little bit of the article, but it's more important for you to listen to this, for you to hear this for yourself. I like for y'all to be able to hear certain things for yourself. So this is what's his name? Hold on, let me get his name right. This is Dr. Michael Baden. He is he used to be a coroner, a medical examiner for New York, and he did the independent, because George Floyd's family hired him to do an independent autopsy of George, because they weren't satisfied with the Hennepin County medical examiner. So I want y'all to hear what Mr. Baden had to say.
That Mr. Floyd had no underlying medical problem that caused or contributed to his death. This is confirmed by information provided to Dr. Wilson and myself from the family. He was in good health. The compressive pressure of the neck and back are not seen at autopsy because the pressure has been released by the time the body comes to the medical examiner's office. It can only be seen, serious compressive pressure on the neck and back can only be seen while the pressure is being applied, or when, as in this instance, it is captured on video. And in this instance, we can see after a little bit less than 4 minutes that Mr. Floyd is motionless, lifeless, and when the EMS arrived and put him on the stretcher without any CPR at that time, during the ambulance trip, he did not respond to CPR and did not respond to cardiac shock. The cause of death, in my opinion, is asphyxia due to compression of the neck, which, as Mr. Crump indicated, can interfere with blood flow and oxygen going to the brain, and compression of the back, which interferes with breathing. When he said, "I can't breathe," unfortunately, many police are under the impression if you can talk, that means you're breathing. That is not true. I am talking and talking and talking and not breathing in front of you. So the concept that a person says, "I can't breathe," like Mr. Garner, like in this instance, means you should take it seriously.
He's a loving guy.
Okay.
He's a big guy.
Now, let me read a little bit to you of this article from ABC News. Independent autopsy finds George Floyd died of homicide by asphyxiation. By asphyxia. Asphyxia is another word for strangulation or suffocation. He suffocated. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't get air. He couldn't get oxygen in his lungs. Okay. The examination was led by a former New York City medical examiner. This was June 1st, 2020. An independent autopsy ordered by George Floyd's family found his death was a homicide caused by asphyxia due to neck and back compression that led to a lack of blood flow to the brain, according to early findings from the examination released Monday. Now, if you will remember, this is the way it went. We had J. Alexander Kuenig, which was one of the officers on the scene, holding down Floyd's legs. We had Thomas Lane, one of the and J. Alexander and Thomas Lane were the two officers that originally interacted with Floyd. They were the ones that originally arrested him, detained him, handcuffed him, and all of this. Okay, so we had J. Alexander holding down his legs. We had Thomas Lane with his knee in Floyd's back. So he was holding down his back. And we had Chauvin pinning him with his knee on his neck. Okay? So that's how you get the neck compressions and the back compressions. Okay? An independent autopsy ordered by George Floyd's family found his death was a homicide caused by asphyxia due to neck and back compression that led to a lack of blood flow to the brain, according to early findings from the examination released Monday. Floyd was apprehended by police officers in Minneapolis, Minnesota last Monday, and one of the officers pinned his knee to Floyd's neck as Floyd called out that he couldn't breathe. An independent examiner found that weight on Floyd's back, the handcuffs, and the positioning were contributory factors because they impaired the ability of Floyd's diaphragm to function. The report concluded that Floyd, 46, died at the scene. Now remember, in the criminal complaint that we read in a report that we read right here in a video, it said at the end of the report that these officers are trained to know that this particular restraint with the knee on the neck, that this particular restraint is inherently dangerous when the victim, the alleged perpetrator or whatever is prone in that position. So they are trained to know that anybody in that position, face down like that, on their stomach, with your knee on their neck, they are trained to know that that position, that restraint in that position is inherently dangerous. The independent, so again, that's what he found, that the handcuffs, the positioning were contributed, and the weight on his back were contributory factors because they impaired the ability of Mr. Floyd's diaphragm to function. Now, later Monday, after the independent medical examiner released his preliminary report, Hennepin County medical examiner released his initial findings. He released some more information. Later Monday, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office released its initial findings of their autopsy and also declared Floyd's death was a homicide. But they claim his was a homicide. They claim it was a homicide caused by a cardiopulmonary arrest while being restrained by the law enforcement officers. So they claiming pretty much that he had a heart attack while he was being restrained. Dr. Michael Baden and the University of Michigan Medical School's Director of Autopsy and Forensic Services, Dr. Alicia Wilson, handled the newly announced independent examination. Baden said Floyd was in good health before his death and said the video of the death showed the compression of his neck and back very clearly. When he said, "I can't breathe," unfortunately, many police are under impression that if you can talk, that means you're breathing. That is not true, he said during the news press conference. We feel, Wilson said, toxicology reports and other examinations are still ongoing, and acknowledged that since they conducted a second autopsy, as the medical examiner had done one previously, they did not have access to Floyd's tissue samples in their original state. We feel those items will not change or alter the cause of death with mechanical asphyxia. And they also, now the Hennepin County medical examiner claims that there was fentanyl intoxication and recent methamphetamine use in Floyd. But according to Dr. Michael Baden and some other experts, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. That's irrelevant. That doesn't have anything to do with anything. The bottom line is, had they not restrained him that way, had they not been compressing his back and his neck for so long, he wouldn't have died. So either way, they're responsible for his death. Okay? So I just wanted to let you know that as far as the independent medical examiner's preliminary findings. And his preliminary findings are homicide caused by asphyxia due to neck and back compressions that led to a lack of blood flow to the brain. Now, I want to give you a little bit more breaking news. Now, I just told you that 2 police officers were fired from the Atlanta Police Department because of this incident with these 2 students.
2 college students who had a harrowing experience during protests in Atlanta. Police body cam footage shows officers tasing them, dragging them from their car. And we have an exclusive interview with the students after this look at what happened. And we caution you, it is hard to watch. It's the kind of encounter sparking protests across the country. Body cam video captures Atlanta police violently confronting 2 college students over the weekend. Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim say they were getting something to eat when they got stuck in traffic during a protest. What happened next made them fear for their lives. Moments later, one of the officers smashes the window before using a stun gun to drag them out of the car. Young suffered a fractured arm, needed 20 stitches. But the pain felt by the community quickly turned to anger.
Use of excessive force is never acceptable.
And we are joined now by Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim, along with their attorneys, Mawuli Davis and Chris Stewart. Thank you all for joining us this morning. First of all, Messiah, I see that big cast on your arm. How are you feeling this morning?
Considering the circumstance, I'm doing okay.
So walk us through what happened on Saturday night.
We were kind of in a traffic jam. It was very hard to move, very hard to get down the street. It was bumper to bumper. and I see a friend of mine on the sidewalk. So, of course, naturally, I just say, hey, what's up? You know, I'm talking to him, making sure he's okay. This probably lasted about 10 seconds, and all of a sudden, he just tackled, like, just straight separated from the car. He was literally an inch away from where I was, like, from the passenger seat, or from the driver's seat, I'm sorry. And he was just taken aback. They literally just threw him to the ground and tackled him. Soon, there was just so many cops swarming the car, literally just out of nowhere. And from then, it was just utter chaos. Like, it's literally just...
And tonight, I know this is, all happened so fast and it's so hard to process, but you actually felt right in that moment that you might die in that car.
Yeah, I actually thought both me and Messiah were going to die. Like, the way everything happened so fast, there was no telling what could happen in the next moment. Because from 10 seconds before to the time it was going on, who could have predicted any of this?
Do you have any sense of why the officers were so aggressive so quickly?
Basically, just because when they tackled him, we were there, basically. Like,
Yeah,
we saw what happened. Like, we were there. We saw everything. We were so in shock. So, who knew what was going to happen next? We had no clue.
The officers, 2 of the officers, as you know, has been fired, and 3 others have been put on desk duty. Mr. Davis, what more do you expect? What more do you want to have happen now?
Now, that's just a little brief clip of their interview on the Good Morning America. And, of course, this will be linked in the description box, and you can see this interview. But I want to read to you what it says. 6 Atlanta police officers charged in forceful arrest of college students in car. Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim were pulled out of a car. And I mean, it is graphic. It is graphic. 6 Atlanta police officers have been charged after forcefully pulling 2 college students out of a car, smashing its windows, and using a stun gun in the course of an arrest as protests continued nearby, a prosecutor announced Tuesday. Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard said that arrest warrants were issued for Lonnie Hood, Roland Claude, Mark Gardner, Armand Jones, Willie Sauls, and Ivory Streeter for the caught-on-camera incident. Howard said Hood, Saul, Streeter, and Jones repeatedly used stun guns on Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim and forcibly pulled them from the vehicle. They were variously charged with aggravated assault, pointing or aiming a gun, simple battery, and criminal damage to property. Howard said there was no reason to wait for an indictment to charge these officers because the information is available, and they usually don't have witnesses because the witnesses are usually deceased and are police officers who refuse to interview with the district attorney's office. So their body cams actually, now you understand the reason why them folks over there in Louisville turned them body cams off. That's the reason why the police chief got fired and those 2 officers are being investigated. Because, see, they turned these body cams off. But this time they didn't turn them off, and the evidence is clear. I'm so happy that they're being held accountable for their actions. There was not one justifiable thing that they did, said Pilgrim. That's the young lady at the prosecutor's press conference on Tuesday afternoon. I hope they are all held accountable because it's not okay. Prior to the incident, Young, who was driving Pilgrim's car, stopped in traffic and appeared to shoot video as an officer was having an encounter with another man. Young told Good Morning America on Tuesday morning. I thought both Messiah and I were going to die, Pilgrim, a student at Spelman College, told GMA. Howard said Young asked the officer to allow the other young man, who was thrown on the ground and was crying, to get in his car. You can hear the officer say, "Go or go to jail." So Mr. Young left. said Howard. The car got stuck in traffic as police caught up to the car and attempted to force the door open, prosecutors said. Claude allegedly used a baton to strike the window several times. It's not allegedly. You can see him doing it. Claude used a baton to strike the window several times, causing it to break. And he's breaking it on the inside. He's breaking it on the outside. So he's shattering all that glass inside on this young man who's driving this car, causing it to break. Gardner and Streeter used stun guns on Pilgrim and Young while pulling them out of the car. Like I said, you can clearly see it in the video. Young suffered a fracture on his wrist and received 24 stitches for a large gash. Howard said Young was charged with eluding the police and released on signature bond. Pilgrim was not charged. So they actually charged him with something. I feel a little safer that these monsters are off the streets and no longer able to terrorize anyone else from this point on, said Young, a student at Morehouse College, at the press conference on Tuesday. We just hope there is a change in the police culture. So I just wanted to let you know that not only have they been fired, but 6 of them have been arrested. And of course, this article will be linked in the description box, and you can see the video for yourself, and you can see what they did. There is no alleging. You know, ABC, all this mainstream media is good for trying to, change the narrative and all of this, and trying to give, these white supremacists and these police officers and all of that the benefit of the doubt. No. The video shows exactly what they did. And they tased these young folks. They broke this window. They pulled them out. You can see it all. And let me see if there's anything else that I had saved in my videos. No, there's nothing else that I had saved. So that's it. I wanted to bring you the latest updates on some of the stuff that's going on. Of course, we know that they got all this stuff going on at the White House. Trump came out yesterday and made his little statement and all this against the protesters. And, if the governors and the mayors and all of this, don't get this under control, he gonna send the military and all of this. But I want y'all to hear something before we go that was on a late show with Stephen Colbert. And I want y'all to hear something, and I want y'all to hear what I want y'all to pay special attention to is what Trump said on a call to the governors and the mayors of these different states. So I just want y'all to listen to this.
In times like these, we need empathetic and moral leadership. Unfortunately, we have Donald Trump. Normally, during national unrest, presidents step up and address the nation's pain. Following the death of Michael Brown, President Obama met with activists in the White House. President Clinton comforted the nation with a moving address after the Oklahoma City bombing. Even Richard Nixon, in 1970, made a surprise trip where he spoke to students protesting the Vietnam War. Who can forget his stirring words?
We've got to come together and defeat our common enemy. The Jews I wrote down on this list.
Trump can't even match the compassion of a Nixon. Because as the protests raged on, Trump's advisors discussed the prospect of an Oval Office address in an attempt to ease tensions, but the idea was quickly scrapped for lack of policy proposals and the president's own seeming disinterest in delivering a message of unity. Okay, Mr. President, we're thinking a short, powerful speech from the Resolute desk where you call for racial healing. I'm sorry, what's that, sir? You want to act it out with a box of Aunt Jemima? You know what? Let's just scrap the whole thing. Today, Trump had a call with the nation's governors to discuss the ongoing protests, and he read straight from the authoritarian playbook.
got to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a punching jerk.
Wise and comforting words. It reminds me of what Mr. Rogers said about times of tragedy. Look for the dominators.
Oh, won't you be? Oh, you will be my neighbor, you jerk.
That was Mr. Rogers dominating someone. Then Trump said something really scary.
You got to arrest people, you have to track people, you have to put them in jail for 10 years, and you'll never see this stuff again.
So people are upset about systemic racism and a society that over-polices and imprisons black people, and Trump's solution is to do more of that? Well, you know what they say, those who refuse to learn from history are Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is the big tough guy going to dominate the opposition. Pew, pew, pew. So naturally on Friday, as protests raged nearby, Trump took shelter in the White House bunker. Well, if history has taught us anything, is that things always work out well for strong men who retreat to underground bunkers. Mr. President, come on, this is your moment. You're always calling to beat up protesters at your rallies. You could shut this whole thing down, just pop a couple of hydroxys and come out of the White House swinging a 5-iron with a Confederate flag taped to it. But instead he tweeted, "Great job last night at the White House by the U.S. Secret Service. They were not only totally professional, but very cool. I was inside, watched every move, and couldn't have felt more safe." Adding, "Nobody came close to breaching the fence. If they had, they would, ... have been greeted with the most vicious dogs. And most ominous weapons I have ever seen. That's when people would have been really badly hurt, at least. Many Secret Service agents just waiting for action. We put the young ones on the front line, sir. They love it." I don't know why they're not letting him give that reassuring speech from the Oval Office.
Dogs. Remember how they sicked dogs on us during slavery? Remember how they sicked dogs on us in the 50s and the 60s during the peaceful protests? And we had dogs sicked on us. Not only were we beat, but we had dogs sicked on us and water hoses turned on us. And he's talking about dogs.
Hello, Americans. Let me send a clear message to the people protesting police brutality. Law enforcement is just a bunch of cool guys who cannot wait for things to get crazy. They see you as target practice, and I would truly enjoy watching you get eaten by vicious dogs. Now let's all come together in peace. Come buy guns, my lord. Come buy guns.
So I just wanted y'all to hear that. I just wanted y'all to hear what he was telling the governors about they have to dominate. If they don't dominate, they're going to be run over. It's just, you know, it's different. But again, I want you to hear it.
People are upset about systemic racism and a society that over-polices and imprisons black people, and Trump's solution is to do more of that? Well, you know what they say, those who refuse to learn from history are Donald.
You got to arrest people, you have to track people, you have to put them in jail for 10 years, and you'll never see this stuff again.
So people are...
So you have to arrest people, you have to track people, you have to put them in jail for 10 years, and you'll never see this stuff anymore. You'll never see this stuff again. You'll never see people protesting police brutality. You'll never see people protesting that and talking about Black Lives Matter. You'll never see this stuff again. So I just wanted to leave y'all with that as far as President Trump is concerned. And of course, you know, this will be in the description box, and you can go hear the whole thing, and you can hear for yourself what he had to say. But I just wanted to bring y'all some information, give y'all some updates, let y'all know what's going on. And there's one more thing that I wanted to talk to y'all about. Let me get this right quick before we get done with this. Because I found this very, very interesting. Let me go over here on my Facebook and get this article for y'all. Hold on, I'm almost there. Yeah, I'm coming. Hold on, hold on. Now, this is an article coming from NBCnews.com. White nationalist group posing as Antifa called for violence on Twitter. So, Trump is all about this is supposed to be Antifa. Everybody talking about, all of this stuff that's going on, all this violence and everything is supposed to be people that are a part of Antifa doing all of this kind of stuff and all of that. But this article clarifies some things. White nationalist group, which is actually a white supremacist group. White nationalist group posing as Antifa called for violence on Twitter, and there are a whole lot of white supremacists and white nationalists and white extremist groups that are a part of all of this. There's this Electric Boogaloo organization that they got. These folks want a civil war, and they are in cahoots with. They have joined forces with many alt-right and far-right and white supremacist organizations who want a race war. So even though they don't necessarily share all the same ideologies, they want the same thing. These folks over here want a civil war. These folks over here want a race war. Bottom line is they want a war. And, they've been on 4chan and they've been on Reddit and they've been in all kind of Facebook groups and other, white supremacist websites and everything talking about using this protest against police brutality against black folks as the perfect opportunity for them to go in, and push their agenda. So it's not Antifa. That's what Trump wants you to believe. That's what Trump wants you to think, that it's Antifa, but it's not Antifa. So let's read. White nationalist group posing as Antifa called for violence on Twitter. Other misinformation and misleading claims spread across Twitter on Sunday night and into Monday related to the protest. A Twitter account claiming to belong to a national Antifa organization and pushing violent rhetoric related to ongoing protests has been linked to the white nationalist group Identity Evropa, according to a Twitter spokesperson. The spokesperson said the account violated the company's platform manipulation and spam policy, specifically the creation of fake accounts. Twitter suspended the account after a tweet that incited violence. As protests were taking place in multiple states across the U.S. Sunday night, the newly created account at Antifa US, at Antifa_US, tweeted, "Tonight's the night, comrades," with a brown raised fist emoji and "Tonight we say fuck the city and we move into the residential areas, the white hoods, and we take what's ours." This isn't the first time Twitter has taken action against fake accounts engaged in hateful conduct linked to Identity Evropa, according to the spokesperson. The Antifa movement, a network of loosely organized radical groups who use direct action to fight the far right and fascism, has been targeted by President Donald Trump as the force behind some of the violence and property destruction seen at some protests, though little evidence has been provided for such claims. And I'm not going to read all of this. You can go, it'll be linked in the description box. You can go read it. You can do some research. But if you go on Twitter, if you go to Tariq Nasheed's Twitter, if you go to Jason Black's Twitter, if you go to some of these other Twitter accounts, you will see the white supremacists that are out and they're operating now. Ever since Donald Trump made his little address to the nation yesterday, calling, telling the governors if they don't hurry up and get it together or whatever, that he gonna bring in the military and all of this. Ever since then, these white supremacists have been out overtly, which means they're not undercover anymore. They're not covering it up. There's one picture of a truckload of white supremacists with their with armed with they AR-15s or 17s or 16s or whatever they call them in the back of a pickup truck. So understand, don't just believe the hype that this is all about Antifa. This is about white. There's an organization, like I said, these Boogaloo folk. And this is an article right here that's coming from Bailing Cat, the Boogaloo movement. And I just want you to listen to just maybe the first paragraph or something. And then I have the rest of it linked and you can read the rest of it. On May 26, crowds gathered in Minneapolis, Minnesota to protest the death of 46-year-old George Floyd at the hands of the city's police department. Floyd was black. Many of the protesters were people of color. He's right. Many of them were Hispanics. You had some Asians out there. You had different folk. The department fired 4 policemen that same day after footage emerged appearing to show Floyd being strangled by a white officer. The video shows him placing his knee on Floyd, cutting off his air supply. Firing these officers was not enough to diffuse anger in the city, where less than 4 years previously, a police officer shot a black man, Philando Castile, dead at a traffic stop after Castile informed him he had a legally purchased firearm. On the internet, meanwhile, a largely white and far-right movement publicly contended over what risk its members should take to support a black man killed by police. On the Facebook page Big Igloo Boys, which at the time of writing had 30,637 followers, an administrator wrote of the protest, "If there was ever a time for boys to stand in solidarity with all free men and women in this country, it is now." They added, "It is not a race issue. Far too long we have allowed them to murder us in our homes and in the streets. We need to stand with the people of Indianapolis. We need to support them in this protest against a system that allows police brutality to go unchecked." One commenter added, "I'm looking to fellow Minneapolis residents to join me in forming a private, constitutionally authorized militia to protect people from the MPD, which has killed too many people within the last 2 years." Now, this Boogaloo Boys is actually this electric Boogaloo movement who are waiting for some event that's going to happen that they can use to engage with law enforcement and military to bring about a civil war. And they are not necessarily white supremacists, but they do have white supremacists that work with them. That information will be, this article will be in the description box. You can go in there and finish reading the rest of it. So Trump has called out. He has given this dog whistle to the white supremacists to come on out. You can come on out in the open. You understand what I'm saying? You and your militias and all of that. In Chicago, you've got a white Hispanic community that is raising up, that they say is targeting black folks and all of that, and targeting soft targets, black women and black elderly folks. So it's on and popping in the streets. So all of you out there that are protesting, be careful, stay aware, know who you're dealing with, because there are videos online everywhere showing black folks calling folks out, black folks pushing folks out of the protest because they don't know who these folks are, because these folks are inciting violence and all of this. Now, are we responsible as black folks? Are we responsible for some of this violence? Yeah. We are definitely responsible for some of it, but most of this destruction and looting is not on us. Not all of it, but most of it is not on us. So we just got to be careful. We got to know what's going on out there. We got to understand that there are people, white supremacists, other organizations with other agendas that are trying to hijack this movement. They're trying to hijack this protest so that they can push their agenda. So for all the black folks out there, you got to take your protest back. You got to stay focused. You got to stay determined. You got to stay going in the right direction, and you got to take your protest back. And you got to bring it back to what it's really all about. This police brutality and the killing of all of these unarmed black men, women, and children in the streets by police officers and anybody else that they decided they want to deputize. Remember, we still got George Zimmerman walking around out there, and he was not a police officer. Remember, we still got them McGregory's and them McMichaels, Gregory McMichael and his son Travis. Well, Travis ain't never been a police officer. He ain't never been law enforcement. Now his daddy was, but he ain't never been law enforcement. So we got to remember what this is all about. And we cannot allow these other organizations and these other groups to come in and hijack these protests and get it and change the narrative, because that's what they're trying to do. That's also what mainstream media is trying to do. They're trying to change the narrative. Now they want to focus on Antifa and all of this other stuff so that they can get everybody distracted and get everybody's mind off of police brutality and the killing of innocent black men, women, and children, or unarmed black men, women, and children by the police. So they're trying to change the narrative. We can't allow that to happen. So we got to stay on our square. And yes, if they're in there to try to change the narrative and they're not in there for solidarity with us, they're not in there to support what our movement, to support what we're doing, yeah, get them out of there. Get them up out the paint. But I just wanted to bring y'all this latest information to let y'all know what's going on, to let y'all know that we got another autopsy report that has come out. We got Donald Trump, who has basically just gave the green light for the military and these white supremacists and everybody else to just come on in and wage war on us. We got 6 police officers who have been charged in Atlanta for police brutality against these 2 students. We got Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, who bullshitting and dragging around, and he's gonna try his best to bury this thing or drag this thing out or whatever. But it wasn't that case. That wasn't the case when it was his son that was staring down the barrel of a gun. So we got to keep him at, we got to bring him to task on this, and we got to make sure that he do his job on this. We still got these other 3 police officers who have not been charged, have not been arrested. We still got Chauvin, who has not been charged the way he should have been charged. So we got to stay on our square. We got to stay on the ball. And we got to make sure that we are giving our support and we are lending our support to these young black men and women who are on the front lines right now, who are risking life and limb on the front lines right now. And they need to know that they got our support. I don't give a damn whether they burning shit, tearing shit down, or whatever they doing. They need to know that they have our support. And they need to know that while they doing their work, we over here doing ours. So, y'all make sure that you get in this description box and that you read these articles, you look at these videos, you know what Trump is saying, what Trump is doing. You understand that he blew the whistle. And now they coming out. They not hiding no more. Go to Tariq's Instagram. Go to some of these other Instagrams. Go on social media and see these videos and know what's going on. And if you have people that are protesting anywhere, friends, family, that are protesting anywhere, tell them to be very careful. Tell them to be watchful. Because these folks are armed. Tell them to be armed. Tell them to be legally armed, so that they can protect themselves out there. And make sure that we are giving them the support that they need. So, y'all please like this video, share this video. Like I always say, don't just talk about it. Don't just share it on your social media. Make sure you having these conversations in your private life with your friends, your family, your co-workers, people that, you having conversations with, or what. Make sure that you are doing this, not just on social media, but also in your personal life. Subscribe to the channel and please hit that bell notification so you can be notified when we upload videos. But make sure, like I said, if nothing else, that you get in this description box, that you read these articles, and you ain't got to take my word for nothing. Do your own research, know what's going on, and share with other people what's going on, especially the people that you know that are out there in the streets right now doing the real work. And I want to throw this in before I go. And be careful of all these folks running around talking about they are leaders and all of this kind of stuff. And they got this movement and they got this movement going and all of this. Just be careful of that. Just be careful of these folks running around talking about they got these organizations and they gonna move and they gonna do this and, oh, we did this here and we did this. Be careful of that, because there's a lot of people that'll pump you up to do stuff, and then when you do it, they start backtracking and they start backing up. So whatever you do, make sure you're doing that because it's genuinely what you want to do. It's not something that you have allowed somebody else to pump you up into doing. So that's it for now, y'all. When I get more information, of course, I'll bring you this information. But like I said, just make sure you get in this description box and you get this information and make sure you share it. Make sure you're having these discussions. Make sure that you are being safe. Make sure that you are being smart. Make sure that you are paying attention to who is around you. Make sure that you're not just assuming that just because somebody's out there in the street with you, that they are an ally. They are a friend. You know what I'm saying? We got videos of folks handing out bricks. We got videos of bricks being conveniently placed on the side of the road and all of this for folks to go get bricks. So you got to be careful. You got to know when you're being set up. You got to know when the traps are being laid for you. So pay attention. Donald Trump point blank lied yesterday in this briefing that he did, this little speech to the nations or whatever, when he talked about this dude in Dallas that was beat down, that was protected. No, he wasn't protecting nothing. The dude in Dallas with the sword that they beat down, he gonna chase people around with a sword. He didn't own any business out there. He came from home with his sword, and he could have easily killed somebody, just like the dude with the bow and arrow. But mainstream media don't show you the whole thing because they want to make it look like the protesters are just being violent just to be violent. No, they protecting themselves. They defending themselves. So y'all keep all this stuff in mind. And again, please be safe. Please pay attention. Please exercise your Second Amendment right to bear arms legally. And don't take just fists to a gunfight, because this is about to become a gunfight. So don't just take your fist to a gunfight. Make sure you are prepared to protect yourself and to protect others around you. And as more information comes in, I'll deliver it to y'all. Y'all have a good day.